Welcome to IVF This, episode 33, Supporting Someone Through IVF. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. I'm a mother to two beautiful and feral boys. I'm married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you are doing well. Today, I wanted to change things up a bit. Usually I'm talking to you all, my beloved IVFers, and sharing coaching concepts and things like that. But today, I want to talk to the people that you all love, the people that love you, the people you want in your lives, the people that you want to continue to build and maintain connections with. There are many points in our journey that we feel we cannot connect to the people around us. There are a lot of reasons for that, and the reasons are very specific to the individual and that relationship. But if you're an IVFer and you're wanting to build connection, maintain connection with the people around you throughout this process, I urge you to share this episode with the people that you love. This one in particular. Not just because this episode is for your loved ones, doesn't mean that you should just turn it off. I got some good stuff for you guys too, so stick around and we'll all hang out. So let's start with the elephant in the room. How to talk to people who are going through IVF. Let me start out with a giant blanket statement. None of this is about policing what you should and should not say. Whomever you are a grown-ass adult and you get to say and do whatever you want. It's a beautiful thing. But if someone you care about shared this episode with you, it means they want you to be part of this journey. They want to share this part of themselves with you. They want you. This might be parents, siblings, partners, best friends, boss, coworkers, whatever, but you're here and you're going to give this episode a listen to, so I want to applaud you for that. One of the things that I take pride in with this podcast is that while we talk about these concepts within the context of infertility and IVF, I believe that everything I teach you can be used in any area of your life. So keep that in mind while I talk about these things. These things could be easily applied to any major event in someone's life. It's also important to keep in mind that I'm going to be making some generalizations. Now, they're educated generalizations based on my own personal experience, my professional experience with coaching hundreds of hours on infertility and IVF, and my professional and educational background in social work. But they are generalizations nonetheless. The most important determinant of remaining connected to someone during this process is your willingness to be open and curious towards that person that you care about who is on this journey. Okay, so that was my preamble for all of it, so let's just jump in. The first thing I want to cover is just how big this experience is for the person going through infertility and IVF. For the vast majority of us experiencing infertility, it is probably one of the only times we have ever set a goal, and then to find out we only have a very small amount of control in the attainment of that goal. Right? We can take the supplements, we can have all the sex, we can do the doctor's appointments, we can eat well, exercise, all of the things that society tells us that we quote unquote should be doing to optimize our chances of success, and it still might not work. Imagine you desire something so deeply, so gutturally, something that seems to come so easy to the people around you, and you cannot have it. Or maybe you got it, but for a moment, and then it went away. That is the reality that your person faces. For many of us, there are dates, anniversaries, or other people's celebrations that are insanely hard for us to navigate. With every pregnancy announcement, every birth announcement, every shower, every question we get about having a family can be like salt in an open wound. I'll touch on these things a little bit more later in the episode, but it is worth mentioning now. Christmas, or really any major holidays, particularly Mother's Day, Father's Day, can be very challenging for us. For so many of us, this idea of motherhood or parenthood is so deeply enmeshed with the future that we have imagined. The future we daydream of, the little talks in the car with our partners about future baby names or how we'll decorate the nursery or what the most important values we want around raising our kiddos. For many of us, they aren't flights of fancy. I mean, it all is to a certain degree, but it really is part of planning for our future, imagining what that future will be, imagining a future full of baby belly laughs and snuggles. When facing infertility, we have to confront, in some way, shape, or form, that notion of what our lives will look like. Will the timeline just look different? What will we have to rethink? Will we ever get the opportunity? So this future that we've imagined filled with warm, squishy thoughts can feel bleak, hopeless, joyless, a life and a future we don't want. We turn away from the people we love, the people that maybe have the thing we so desperately want. Not because we are selfish, but because it can literally be too painful to be in their presence. The challenge of or loss of a complete identity to want the one of a parent is as stressful and traumatic a loss as any other kind: death, divorce, betrayal. Like other crises that people experience, infertility is a breach of our expectations, of what we thought, of what we were told, of what we imagined life would happen. This isn't a question of, oh, I played with dolls when I was a kid and I always wanted to be a mom. It's, I don't know how I can function some days because the pain of this and the pain of what I thought my life would look like is too much for me. It's really important to note that. Another aspect that really impacts us is shame. The shame that we feel around really the whole thing. I did a deep dive into infertility shame in the 4th episode of this podcast. I implore you to listen. Now, people can tell us until they're blue in the face that there is nothing to be ashamed of, and that is completely correct. But the fact of the matter is that we, women, have been programmed to believe that being a mother is peak womanhood, that our bodies are the ones that create these lives, and if it's peak womanhood, and this is what our bodies were designed to do, then we can't get pregnant. Well, that's the biggest breeder of shame in the whole world. For a lot of us, we feel betrayed by our bodies, like they have somehow let us down. This is only amplified by the social and cultural perception that infertility is a woman's issue. I have some amazing friends in my life, people that I know love and support me without hesitation, and they still asked me what was wrong with me that we struggled with infertility. Did you know that 1/3 of infertility is female factor, 1/3 is male factor, and the final third is a hodgepodge of crap known as unknown infertility? There is equitable distribution of fertility cause, and yet women historically and in the modern world bear the social burden, and that is not hyperbole, the social burden of infertility. We are constantly bombarded with messaging directed at motherhood, reminding us of our ticking clock, and a reinforced cultural belief that having children is everything, that a future without children, a barren future, is joyless and empty. This all contributes to the shame that we experience during infertility. Within the context of shame, I think it's important to explore one of the most painful aspects that we are exposed to with other people, and that is the things that people say to us. Now, before I get into this section, I want to remind you that I said at the top of the episode, this isn't about policing what you say. It's about giving context to why the things that you say can be so hurtful. So let's start out with a few of the most common things that people say. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but it covers a lot of the common things. The question, so when are you going to have kids? This can seem like a completely innocent and innocuous question, like a polite way of making conversation. And in many ways it is. But for anyone struggling with infertility, it can be a subtle reminder of their quote unquote failure in being able to get or stay pregnant. This can be a tough one for friends and family to navigate because often infertility is not openly discussed. So this isn't saying you're never allowed to ask this question, but more like is there a different question to ask? How's work going? Something like that. Another one is, have you tried? Again, this is typically coming from a very genuine place and a desire to help. However, if someone is staring down the barrel of a $20,000 IVF price tag, rest assured they have probably tried whatever it is you might be suggesting. Wait for that invitation to offer something. Let them take the lead. If they are crowdsourcing for information or tips or tricks, they'll let you know. Another one is, Well, my brother's third cousin's wife, once removed, had trouble getting pregnant and it took them 18 years, but don't give up hope. A comment like that can be problematic for a few reasons. One, whomever you're drawing a comparison to might not be relevant. There's so many variables with infertility that even the most similar sounding story is still unlikely to parallel in the way that you're trying to offer hope. Two, if the timeline of your comparison is longer or shorter than the person you're speaking to, well, that can create unnecessary stress. If the timeline is longer, well, then our brains are going to get to work about how terrible this is and how much of a long haul we'll be in for and how we'll never get our miracle. If the timeline is shorter, well, then in our brains, we're obviously doing something wrong since it hasn't happened for us and it happened for them, reinforcing the belief that it's our fault. Then there's the trifecta. Just relax, at least, or stop trying. Ooh, these are ragers for me. Again, we get that it's coming from a place of love and concern, but in and of itself, these are very dismissive things to say. Imagine you're struggling with something that has rocked you to your very core, has made you question your life, your future, yourself as a person, and someone's response is, you just need to relax. Imagine your partner had an affair, and in the depths of your inner torment, someone you love said, well, at least you got a few good years out of that relationship. I know it might not seem like there's a parallel there, but there is. Just relax, stop trying, or anything that starts with at least is an invalidation of the incredibly emotional experience this person is having. I know why people say it. Big emotions, particularly from the people that we care about, can be very uncomfortable for us. We often use these types of phrases because we are uncomfortable because they are so uncomfortable. It's so very human. We all do it. But I'll be honest, in that moment, it's not about you and how uncomfortable you are. It's just not. If you are uncomfortable, imagine the level of discomfort for the person sitting in front of you, wondering if they have to rethink every aspect of their future and their lives, of everything they thought they would be doing and how, because I guarantee you that's something that we think about a lot. And lastly, making jokes. This admittedly can be a little difficult for people to navigate. I have kind of a dark sense of humor, so I would make jokes about what was going on, even if I was dying inside. I would do that as a way of releasing my own tension, but it's kind of like when you have a sibling and you make fun of them, it's totally fine. But when someone else jumps in to make fun of them, and it's like on like Donkey Kong. Yeah, totally similar. If we make the joke, huzzah, we're trying to release a little tension for ourselves. And even if it gets awkward, again, it's not really about you. So give them a courtesy laugh and move the conversation along. Now, if you decide a joke is warranted for some reason, follow this very simple strategy. If you said the joke in your workplace and someone could report you for sexual harassment over it, don't say the joke. Full stop. It's not going to be funny. Let me give you a few examples. Telling someone, are you sure you're doing it right? Do you need me to show you? Or when will you do your manly duty and get that girl knocked up? Or don't forget to hoist those legs up every time. Or, hey, at least you're getting in a lot of practice. I mean, just don't. Just don't. It's not appropriate. It's not necessary. Just all of the knots. I bet you're a pretty funny person regardless. There are other things that you can joke about. Okay. Now let's talk specifically about how to help. First and foremost, let them take the lead. In conversations asking, how are you? Let them answer however they're going to answer. If they want to have it as a conversational topic, they'll mention it. If they don't, then they won't. And let that be that. If someone wants you to know the innermost workings of their private lives, they will let you know. If that's not a topic they want to cover on that day, or maybe you guys have tiptoed into it, but they look super uncomfortable, allow that part of the conversation to go and move on to another topic. Another aspect of letting them take the lead is if they tell you they are going to see a doctor or starting fertility treatments, typically a knee-jerk response is, well, that's exciting. I get this all the time. I still do. The best way I can say this is the news might be exciting for you, but for the person who is about to go through it, exciting might be one of 100 different emotions they're experiencing on a given day. So don't assume how they feel. I can tell you that so many people that I have adored had responded with, "That's exciting." And the response in my head is, "Yeah, I bet it's really effing exciting for you since you don't have to go through it." Obviously, that's really specific to me. Your person might not be as ragey as me, but I think that gives you an idea of why asking them, "How do you feel about that?" Or "What do you think about that?" can be such a better connector than assuming how they feel. Even a, "Well, that's exciting. How do you feel about it?" Right? Just anything to acknowledge that what you are assuming is an exciting time, which it probably is, but it's not exclusively that it's multi-layered. Avoid drawing comparisons unless specifically asked. I talked about this a little bit, but I think it bears repeating. I see this come up, especially if you yourself have experienced infertility or maybe trouble trying to conceive. People in general like to draw comparisons. We tend to think of it in terms of like helping us to relate to people better, which is a completely human thing. We want to offer a sense of camaraderie, like we've been in the trenches too, which again is such a lovely thing, but can also be very isolating. When someone tells you, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel," oftentimes that can be very alienating. Like, how could you possibly know exactly how I feel? It can put the person on the defensive immediately. Even as a coach, I've heard from hundreds of women and even my own 9-year story, and none of the stories are the same. No one, even if they had startlingly similar stories, can know exactly how someone feels in any given moment. Let your person tell you how they feel, what they fear, what they're thinking about. Again, if they're looking for that comparison, they'll ask. They will. If you are or have ever been in the infertility community, you know we're masters of crowdsourcing for information. There are Facebook group after Facebook group, tens of thousands of members deep, that are run with 85 to 90% of the material and posts pertaining to crowdsourcing information. We've got that covered. If we're talking to you and not asking for a comparison, it's because we need to talk, because we need to share our story. Sharing our stories as people, it's like one of the most basic desires that we have. You want to share your story, we want to share ours. The second big one is it's okay to be honest. It's okay to be honest with us when you don't know what to say. A lot of times we don't either. It's really hard for people to admit this because we have such a culture that thrives on saying the right thing. Shit, that sets the bar pretty high, doesn't it? So if you can't think of the quote unquote right thing to say, spoiler alert, there's no right, but I digress, then we often don't say anything. We try to avoid being uncomfortable ourselves, so we avoid the person and the situation, which tends to make things worse. If your person shares with you and you don't know what to say, be honest. Fess up and acknowledge, wow, I want to say something, but I don't know what to say. In that same vein, it's okay for you to be honest if you need a break from talking about your person's infertility. You have the right to set the boundary. You can do it respectfully, of course, but it's okay to tell the person you care about, "I know how important this is to you, and you are important to me, and I love talking to you, and I love that you want to talk to me about it, but maybe there's something else we can talk about right now." Right? Something like that. It obviously doesn't have to be such a rote thing, but a respectful redirect. During our first few years, I talked about it constantly to anyone and everyone at work, home, with friends. It consumed me, and therefore it consumed my conversations. Just recognizing that for your person can go a long way. I'm sure it can be frustrating as hell that it feels like every conversation finds its way to infertility. And oftentimes when we don't set a boundary around that and the conversations continue to go that way, we grow more and more frustrated. And that's when we tend to say dismissive or insensitive things, or we ignore or avoid the person. I talk a lot with my clients about setting boundaries for themselves, but you, as their person, as their friend or family member, you have the right to set a boundary too. For couples or best friends, it can be recommended that you set a specific date or time to talk about what you're going through so that your entire relationship doesn't become about that one thing. And I don't want you to just think about it as a boundary for yourself, but this is also a kind of incognito way to help your person. Like I said, the first few years, I was consumed by infertility. I totally forgot I was a whole person outside of it because I hated myself so much in relation to my infertility. I got so tunnel vision on every aspect. By creating a boundary around how and when, how often to talk about what they're going through, you might even help them reconnect with the other parts of them that existed before infertility. Now, they might not like the boundary, and that's okay. Boundaries set with love and intention can still be hard, but it's also very hard to feel completely disconnected from someone you love and not know how to connect. And lastly, try not to take things personally. This is super challenging for most people in everyday situations, and we're not really taught to do this. 99% of the time, we make things that people do or say to us mean something about us. Infertility is no different, but your person is hurting deeply, maybe in a way they never thought they would or could. There's lots of big emotions: anger, jealousy, resentment, sadness, loneliness, and those are just the first few that come to mind. When we are grieving, which is a huge, albeit unspoken aspect of infertility, we tend to react in ways that we wouldn't otherwise. Trauma, another huge and under-acknowledged aspect of infertility, also amplifies and changes our reaction to things. Your person might yell at you, might be crying one minute, laughing the next, might say some hurtful things to you. Now, I'm in no way excusing behavior. Verbal, physical, or emotional abuse is never acceptable. But what we're talking about is context. If someone you love who has always been pretty even-keeled person is suddenly up and down, put it into context. It's not that, oh, they must hate me or what the hell did I do wrong? It's they are really struggling with something right now. Maybe it isn't about me. It can be very hard to stay, what we coaches call, out of the pool. That means that the person that we're talking to is in their water, in their pool. Their pool feels very real to them. It feels very scary and very tumultuous. As a coach, I know I'm not the one that put them in the pool. It's not my job to get in the pool with them. In fact, if I jump in the pool, then I've lost the ability to be objective, to be supportive, to, help. By staying out of the pool, you can still acknowledge what is happening for them is so very real, but it doesn't have anything to do with you. Your person might miss things. Family gatherings, baby showers, holiday parties, things like that can be incredibly difficult to navigate. I talked about it at the top of the episode. Not only with the inappropriate questions and comments that will invariably come up, but also this idea of when is it going to be my turn? Family holidays can be really hard for us because we desperately want to be showing off a growing baby bump or a new baby, and every holiday and get together might be salt in that wound. It's not a given that that's true for everyone, but it might be true from time to time for your person. Maybe your person is your best friend and you're pregnant and she's not, and she's distancing herself from you. This happened with me and my best friend. I got pregnant first, and we had both started trying it pretty much the same time. I remember we had planned a baby moon to go to Washington, D.C., which is where they lived, and we would sightsee and visit with her and her husband. Of course, I was overjoyed, and of course, she was hurting. But neither of us really took time to acknowledge that. And so when we returned home, it was in May, and then my oldest was born at the end of August. Between that time, we really didn't communicate much. And when I tell you that she and I text several times a day, that's actually downplaying our level of communication. But I think it was a couple of months before both of us really acknowledged what was going on. I opened up to her that I was frustrated, that it felt like she was pulling away, and that I was so desperately wanted her to walk with me through this. She acknowledged that it was devastating for her to see me pregnant and still not be there herself. It wasn't like a magic cloud lifted, but when we stepped out of what was happening in our own immediate lives, the immediate interpretation of what we were making each other's words and actions mean, we were able to remember that both of us were just human, and both of us were hurting in different ways. If this is you and your person, maybe you already have kids, maybe you don't even want kids. Taking yourself out of the story as the main character is huge. The person that this is happening to, the she's ignoring me, she canceled plans 2 times. They don't even want to be around us. When you take yourself out of that and consider, maybe it's really hard for her to be in large groups because either someone is going to ask her about it or she's afraid someone's going to ask her about it. Maybe she's afraid she's going to get really emotional over something and not feel like she can control it and would risk missing out rather than be embarrassed that she can't stop crying because this adorable little family is also at the vineyard having a picnic, and that's an image she has pictured in her mind for her future family. Maybe the fertility treatment hormones are absolutely kicking her ass and she is exhausted. Maybe she doesn't want to navigate all the "why aren't you drinking?" There can be millions of reasons why that have absolutely nothing to do with you. Let them have them. It's not like you have to hide your disappointment. Not at all. But make sure they know it's not them you're disappointed in. It's that you care about them and you want to spend time with them, but that you understand. And that you understand why. And that the invitation is standing, so if they feel up to it that day, hooray, we'll party down. If not, I'll still love you through it. Above all, compassion. Compassion for them and compassion for you. You're not going to get it right every time. Hell, I'm a coach. I talk about this stuff all day, every day, and I still get it wrong. No one bats 1,000. It's a question of continuing to show up in compassion and curiosity. That's what your person is going to remember the most. That's the thing that will build and maintain connection during a time when they feel disconnected from everyone and everything, including themselves. So this is what I have for you today, my friends. Until next time, remember, you have got this, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.